Hi, I'm Tracey Soltis.
And I'm Kali Alfaro. And you're listening to the Mind Body Studio, a place for anyone who wants to reach their full potential, thrive, and create a life filled with vitality.
Each week, we'll bring you our expertise, giggles, and a splash of quirky to explore real and relevant topics to help you along your life's journey.
We'll bring you science, psychology, and practicality to real life issues.
So, thanks for listening. We know you're going to love it.
Alrighty. Welcome back, everybody. How you doing today, Kalí?
Welcome. I'm doing great. How are you, Trace?
I'm awesome. I'm actually having a really great day. It's been super productive, even though it's very cold and I had quite a frosty morning because Synergy, God bless them, turned my power off at 7 a.m. this morning to do maintenance. So that was fun. We were halfway through brewing our coffee, and I think considering that coffee was definitely not provided for first thing in the morning, we did have a little hurdle there, but we're doing pretty well because you guys know I love my coffee. Did manage to get 2 coffees in. My beautiful hubby went down to McDonald's and grabbed me a nice long black coffee, so I'm pretty good. The day's been rolling on since then.
Well, I think that is quite pertinent to our topic today, which is how do we challenge ourselves?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely one thing that comes up quite regularly in my office is, that fear and those sort of feelings of uncertainty about making changes and going into a challenging type area, because people do associate challenging with failure and fear and all those negative emotions come up. But as we know, challenging ourselves is really important as we evolve along our journey. So we thought it would be great to share a couple of our challenges that we've had recently, and then give you guys some strategies and tools and things like that if you're looking to challenge yourself. So
I love that, and I think it's really important to mention that everyone goes through challenges, and no matter what kind of lifestyle you have, everyone is going to be faced with different challenges. Everyone's got like their own sort of cross to bear, so to say, and life can be extremely challenging at times, but what we are going to talk about today is sort of the magic behind what happens when you intentionally go out of your way to challenge yourself. Because as Tracey just mentioned, we are often in fear mode and we are often afraid of failure. So people might associate that to, a fear response. And as you guys would know by now, those, our listeners out there, we're always trying to bring back a greater sense of control and lower that stress response to fear and survival. So I'm going to share a little experience that I just had literally a couple of days ago. I took off with a friend up into a beautiful red rock country. So I went about 500 kilometres north of Perth into a place called Kalí. And now Kalí was hit by a cyclone, Saroja, not that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago, actually. I remember.
I think it was around Easter or something, so maybe 4 months ago.
And so what's it like up there at
So
the
the town is destroyed. It's actually quite heartbreaking to see as you're driving through, roofs of houses and fences that have fallen off, and some buildings are completely destroyed. But, Mother Nature stands strong. So all of the gorges, which we were going to go and hike through in the national park, they were all intact, obviously. Mother Nature constructs things with a greater level of engineering than we do.
Yeah.
So I spent a week up north hiking through these absolutely magnificent places, and it's surrounded, for our listeners that are kind of visual, it's, you're driving through a sort of low bush at sunrise. So you've got, the sun's smashing you in the eyes. You've got to drive really carefully because at sunrise is often when beautiful little roos and other animals, go and jump around and move and feed and whatnot. So we're arriving and there are all of these trails, and you go through this absolutely beautiful scenery. There's a magnificent river that goes through it. And you see all of these little birds, and the banksias are all flowering and they're absolutely gorgeous. And you're walking through, and then you get to really narrow gorges, right? So, and I was carrying a small little day pack with water and a couple of snacks. And we're hiking through, and there were bits where like the gorge was so narrow that you could barely turn around with your backpack, and other bits where you had to go down this really steep ladder and then climb up it and climb over a creek. And so you find yourself sort of like using all fours, right? You're kind of holding on to a rock, and then you're looking down. And I don't know about you, but I'm always on snake alert. It's like, where am I putting my hand? Because like
spiders and snakes.
We do live in Australia, so like everything's bloody, poisonous. So you're like fully alert. There's no time to kind of yawn and get bored and, like kind of not pay attention. And you're moving through and you don't know where you're going, and then suddenly you might get like a glimpse of sunshine and the rock is just illuminated. You can see all of the sediments of Earth. And you can see like where the water would have been like, millions of years ago, or maybe not that long ago. And so it's really quite fascinating. It just completely lightens up your brain. And one of the reasons we're talking about doing challenging experiences, and, at the end you get to the river, and it's quite a sight, and it's really quite beautiful. So you get into that space where you are in awe of nature. You have those moments where you're like, wow, these rocks are ancient.
It's so ancient up there though.
So ancient.
Yeah, you can
feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it. You can feel the history there. Like, who knows exactly how old that place is.
Incredible.
But yeah, there's just no words to describe it unless you see it.
And you sit and you listen to the sound of like the water or tiny little tricklings of, melted something, trickling down on the side of the rock. You see the spider webs, in the morning sun with little drops of dew on them. And, you see some wildlife, and you really do have a really humbling experience.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about this is that on one of our treks, I was there with a friend, and we walked all along the mountain ridge. And, most people that live in Australia know that, the temperatures can get quite high. So you absolutely have to carry enough water.
You have to carry heaps of water because it's surprising how quickly you
dehydrate.
Go through it. Yeah.
And, you're sweating and you're breathing, and it's, it's still very hot terrain. And at one point, someone that I was with, we were hiking, and they said to me, oh, this is like a really, really steep gorge we're going down. I don't know if I can do it back up. And there was a loop option, but part of the road was flooded, right? So we had to make an executive decision of, do we go through that loop option where if you don't think that you can continue doing it now, we're going to be further away, even though it's similar distance, right?
Yeah.
When you're looping, it's still further away.
Yeah.
And you're on the other side of the river.
Yeah. You guys are on a track though, right? You're on like a walk trail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, it's still like, if you get dehydrated a kilometre away from the car park versus 10 kilometres, it could be life or death, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, and this one of our friends that was hiking with us had this real moment of fear, right? Had this real moment of doubt of, oh my gosh, I actually don't think I can go back up.
Yeah.
So let's keep going. And it's like, well, we don't have enough water to keep going. We have to go back up. And we were talking about, no, don't even think for a second about thinking that you can't do it, right? And it's funny how our mind plays tricks. So often when we do something hard, the mind will immediately go to what's most familiar. And for a lot of people, negativity is familiarity, right?
Yeah, the words of I can't do it. you know, I'm not going to make it. All of those like negative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, we're made for this. Our bodies are made for this. I was born to do this. We're strong. We got, you know, amazing legs, amazing equipment. We're going to do this and it's going to be amazing. And I was saying to my friend, all I want you to focus on is like one step at a time, literally. Right? And I remember I got taught that when I hiked a massive volcano in the south of Chile. And there was like this massive landslide on the side.
But
and
that's like it's a volcano. Oh my gosh.
But you know, it was the same premise. It was like they was just saying to us, like, just focus one step after the other.
Yeah. Did you see any like floating lava?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. See, that stuff changes really quickly too.
Totally.
So yeah, that's a whole other experience. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
So I know this is a little bit of a long story, but anyway, we get to the top of the mountain, the top of the ridge. It wasn't a mountain. We get to the top of the ridge, and my friend was actually really pleased, and they were saying to me how incredible it was that after I sort of gave him a bit of a psychological bitch slap and pep talk, they felt so much more empowered, and they said to me, it's so incredible how by just activating those couple of thoughts of, yes, I was born to do this, I can do it, just one step after the other, they felt completely empowered. They felt so satisfied that they had reached that top, and they had a greater sense of belief in themselves. And then the friendship was stronger because it was a moment of bonding, you know. It was like,
nice.
Oh, thanks so much for like, you know, giving me that little push and stuff.
Yeah.
So what I want to really illustrate with this long-winded story that I'm telling everyone is that it's really healthy to put yourself in challenging situations. It's really healthy because you are facing fears. You are using your body, especially when you're out in nature, in ways that we're not used to doing. We're not used to like climbing over boulders and, you know, figuring out how to get through a canyon and whatnot. And when you can push through those negative thoughts of fear and you can have a little bit of nudging support to really refocus. No, this is what we're here to do, right?
Yes.
This is what we're made to do. You activate that self-belief and then suddenly the body cooperates.
Yeah.
That's the beauty. That's the magic.
Yeah. But it's that adrenaline and the cortisol that kicks
Absolutely.
in as well. Because when you're in a place where you're out in the wild, like all of your primal instincts are going to
And there's no one around.
There's no one to help you. There's no helicopter flying above that's going to pull you out.
No.
There's no ladder to climb up. Like you literally have to do it by yourself. So you have to find the willpower. The willpower, the motivation. Like you have got the energy in you to do it, and sometimes you just need that little kick up the bum or a little snake to come behind you and like scare the absolute crap out of you so you tear yourself up the hill. But still, it's one of those experiences that when you're out in the wild, which is where we are supposed to be, out in nature and enjoying, you know, the presence of these beautiful, you know, landscapes and environments, you do get in touch with your inner self far more than when you're walking around a city street. I mean, I think we all switch off when we're just walking around a city street. We don't really focus
and that's
too
what
much.
I mean when you're kind of climbing through boulders and you're going through these like narrow ridges. You don't have that opportunity to just switch off. You got to be on.
Yeah. And so that's exhausting in itself too. That's like lots of energy being expended there because you are in a heightened state. I mean, if you were perhaps
You're hyper alert, right?
You're hyper alert. And I think that but if you were to go back, say not that long ago, I mean, we haven't been a civilized peoples or species for that amount of time, really. We look at the whole evolutionary history of the human species. Like we're newbies to the city life.
Yeah,
we're newbies
absolutely.
to settling in, you know, colonies and civilizations and towns and cities and all of those things. That isn't actually the norm for humans. The norm is to be out in the wilderness, to be out in nature. But we're not exposed to that anymore. Like, how often do you go, oh my God, there's a cockroach in the house? I mean, that happens to me all the time, you know, like, oh, freak out, there's a cockroach. Or, you know, but this is the thing, is that we aren't exposing ourselves to like real life, like that essential, like basic, simplified, human life anymore. We don't need to be challenged by that. So simply going through those processes is a cognitive challenge for people. It does trigger different emotions. It does trigger a fear response because it's completely outside the norm of what it is that we typically do. But once we do believe in ourselves, then that primal instinct kicks in. And then before we know it, we're actually powering up that hill and taking off and taking charge and finding leadership within ourselves, because it is there. It's just waiting to come up at the right time.
And this is why I think, like doing challenging things is so important, because it literally challenges your mindset.
Yeah.
And if you can push through those little barriers of fear and then get over that, and then you have a really intense emotional experience of satisfaction, you feel empowered, you feel like bonded and supported. What the brain does, it floods you with all of these beautiful, strong chemicals, and it creates what's called a neuroassociation in your brain. So it activates all of the pleasure centers in your brain. So the brain remembers those experiences that are really strongly embedded, right, with emotion. So then the brain goes, I want to do this again.
Yeah.
Because that felt good.
Yeah.
Right. So this is why it's so important to challenge yourself, because then when you come back to like normal life, so to speak, and you're faced with a challenge with a client or a boss or a partner or just anything to do with life, your ability to push through that and remember that the last time you were faced with a challenge, you were able to overcome that and that felt really good and you didn't succumb to that fear and that negative self-talk, that's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And I've had not even a similar experience myself, but I guess along the same kind of lines of as a nomadic type experience and what I'm doing at the moment with my challenge. And mine's based around more of a diet, nutrition, kind of going back to basics type space. And so, with winter being in Perth and the fact that we can't move around, I mean, we aren't nomads anymore. We are stuck in our little civilization with our communities and our cities and all those sorts of things. I mean, the normal thing for humans would be to be migrating with the season, to move with the sun, to move with the animals and where the vegetation and the wildlife is. But we don't do that anymore. We are very much kind of stuck in our civilizations because we have jobs and families, and it's a completely different norm to what it was for millions of years, right? So for me, I've been going back to the basics of treating winter as a time for fasting. So I'm burning through some of the toxins, burning through some of the fat that's been accumulating there since my summer. And I've been going into more of a ketogenic type diet. So, really cleaning out the carbohydrate glucose stores, the glycogen stores and things like that, so that I can put myself into a place where I'm burning fat and cleaning out the plaque from my brain and my body and all those sorts of things. And that's obviously following quite a strict regimen, a very strict diet, and that also goes in line with exercise as well, because you need to keep up, different parts of your exercise regime. Even though it's winter and it's really hard for people to get up, it's so important for us to keep moving. And if you can't get out and you can't move in the cold, doing weights, doing resistance training, doing some yoga, doing some gentle stretching and some breath work is so important to maintaining your muscle mass and your body's flexibility and strength over winter. Because if you think about it, I mean, if we were normal and we were living in this, as a species that we are meant to be, we'd still be moving. We'd be going with the seasons. We would be probably up near Kalbarri now, right?
Yeah,
because we would
nice
be
and
up
warm.
nice and warm up there. I know it's cold during the day, but still it's like,
evening. Yeah.
I mean, in the evening, but it's still warm during the day. I'm sure you went swimming. Did you go swimming?
I sure did.
So you're out there.
But I go swimming every moment. I went swimming this morning at 2 degrees.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. I know, but that's, yeah, I know. She stopped messaging me now, by the way. She's not asking me to come swimming. I put that on hold until summer. But
I have a question for you, Trace, about your challenge.
yeah.
What was like you're going through this like fasting challenge, right? And you're putting your body into ketosis. What sort of mental talk or patterns have you noticed coming up when you are about to put yourself through that?
Yeah.
Because I know from a psychological perspective, whenever you're making any dietary changes or, you know, someone's going on a specific health regime, it does require a lot of psychological qualities to come to the surface so that you can actually do it in a healthy and okay way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm really resourced, right? So I've done, this has obviously been my life for a really long time, understanding the biochemistry down to a cellular level, the atoms and molecules, the exchange of electrons, all of that sort of stuff is really basic for me. And I understand like what's going on when you're going through a ketosis type state. But for me, it's about becoming a better version of myself. So I'm already motivated. I'm always motivated, but I'm always looking to go outside the box and try different things to try and see how I can improve functions in different ways that might be outside the norm or outside the way that, you know, our society kind of streamlines us into going
so what
down.
do you do when you see or notice fear come up or like an old pattern of, oh, maybe just have a little bit of this today. You've been good all day.
It's really funny you say that because when I make a decision to do something, I always stick to it. And it doesn't really take it would take an absolute mountain of something to happen for me to drive myself off course because I just have a determination to do something and to try it and give it 100% of my energy and resources to doing it. And that way I can get a really good understanding if it's something that works for me or it doesn't work for me. Because I think you have to give something a very good opportunity and a really good go so that you can actually see whether it works for you before you make a decision to kind of quit. You know, I think if there's times, and I have to be honest in saying that since I started this and given that I am motivated, I don't crave carbs. I just don't. I mean, it's amazing how easy this type of fasting and diet works for me because I've done it before. My body is already aware of what's going to happen. There's a transitional period, so I know that for a couple of days I might feel a little bit flat while I go from a glucose burning body to a fat burning body.
So so isn't that interesting? I find that fascinating because your knowledge and your understanding that there is that transition period will prepare you to accept that and not kind of like succumb to temptation during that phase because you know what's kind of happening, right?
You've got to give your body a chance to transition and to change because there's no flick of the switch where it's just instantaneous and you go from feeling amazing to amazing again. You've actually got to transition and create new pathways in the body for it to actually go the way it's supposed to. And the body has to keep up with that. If you've been feeding your body carbs and glucose and sugars and processed foods for a long period of time, there's going to be a transition period from going from a glucose-fueled body to a fat-fueled body. I mean,
and the same goes for your mind, whatever you've been feeding your mind, right? So 100%. If you've been feeding fear and negativity and a mentality of I can't and it's too hard and this is the way I am, so this is the way I'll always be.
And so, you have to change that mindset.
Right?
You have to work hard. This is not an easy thing as well, but you will get to a point or you need to get to a point where you're ready to make the change. And that does come down to the readiness of someone to make a change. Stages of change, because you can, set a New Year's resolution. Like we've talked about this before, where you can set a New Year's resolution and by the 15th of January, you're like, oh, this is too hard. But it's because you're probably giving it a shot, but your mindset's not there. You're in a transitional phase and you will come out the other end of it, but you've got to give it a chance and you've got to give it some time.
And you also got to understand why you decided to do that. Is it because everyone's doing it? Is it because you really want to do it? Does it align with your values? We've talked about our values previously.
Absolutely.
So all of those reasons will be driving forces behind your success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yes, you have to determine why you want to do it. And for me, it's always about health. It's always about making myself as healthy as possible. It's about preventing disease. It's about making sure I don't have to take tablets for things. I'm being mindful of disease prevention, and what's going to get me there is getting rid of the toxins in my body. And the way to do that is to fast. And I know that that's a whole other topic that we probably need to cover, about fasting and ketosis and all of those sorts of things. Today we're talking about challenges, but this is my challenge that I've been doing since winter really kicked in about 2 weeks ago for us. Actually, yeah, about 2 weeks ago. And the reason why I did that is because I had a DEXA scan. So I'm not sure if you know what a DEXA scan is. Have you ever had a DEXA scan before?
No, but you show me yours.
Yeah. So DEXA scans are amazing. So they just a little tiny bit of X-ray frequency through the body. So you lay down on a bed. It's a weighted bed, so it will tell you how much you weigh. A little machine comes over the top of you and scans your whole body, and then can tell you your fat mass density, your muscle mass density, your bone density, a whole heap of stuff. So you get like a 4-page report on where you are holistically with your health. So it basically gives you a good starting point of how much fat's there, how much muscle's there, what are my bones like, am I leading myself to osteoporosis, am I leading myself potentially in a position where I could have falls because I'm not getting enough weight training, am I actually on the right diet, am I converting my fat cell, like all the fat in my cells, into fuel to burn, those sorts of things. So it's a really comprehensive report, and it is a good starting place. So a lot of people who are looking to lose weight do use a DEXA scan as a starting point, or athletes also are big on those DEXA scans. And for me, it was a bit of a highlighter. So I haven't had one for a while, and I have been a little bit loosey-goosey with my diet. I'm just going to put that out there. I have been loosey-goosey. I've been super busy, and, I'm just like everybody else who is listening to this. And so that was the motivation that I needed.
Amazing that is, everyone, and Tracey. Everyone is amazing.
Exactly. But that's the motivation that I needed to go, okay, this is the facts, because I'm a very factual person. I needed to see it in writing. I needed to see what my body composition was, where I was sitting, from a very scientific perspective, so I could see what I needed to work on. And as soon as I saw those results, I was right, this is what I need to kick into gear. I need to build my muscle mass up, because you know what? I haven't been doing as much Pilates or weight training as what I typically would.
Sometimes we need a visual, right?
You need a visual.
Sometimes you need a bit of a wake-up call.
And this shouldn't be a scary thing for people, right?
It should be a motivating thing.
It's motivating because from the moment that you get a report like that, you have an ability to change. Okay, so you can go say to me, oh, I don't want to get that because I don't want to see like how much fat muscle, like her mass is going to come up. It's like, well, hang on a second. If you can actually see it and it's right in front of you, that's giving you everything you need, that evidence right now.
Knowledge is power.
To tell you that you need to make a change. And then it's up to you. It's your choice. You don't have to make a change. You can live the life that you want to live in any way that you want to. But deep down, you know that sometimes you need a blunt truth to say, this is how it is, and you need to make a change. And for me, I mean, obviously I'm relatively healthy anyway, but for me, it was a good eye-opener again. It was that reinforcement of messages, because I needed that little kick up the behind to say, okay, Tracey, like you've eaten a few too many pretzels lately and you don't normally do that. So there it is. So, that's what I needed. And that's what started me on this course, because I was like, right, I don't want to get to disease. That's a big no-no for me. I don't want to be one of those people that has to have a Monday to Sunday pill container with all their pills in it. I know that some people are in a position where they have to, and there's no problem with that. But what I'm saying is I'm a relatively healthy person right now. I simply don't want to go down that line where I'm having to pop pills to put a Band-Aid on a problem. So that was it. Also, just on that as well, for me, it's really important, in the position that I am as a molecular biologist, as a coach, as a mum, as a wife, to set a good example.
Absolutely.
Okay, I live and breathe what I preach. And for me, that's really important. I don't want people coming into my office and not seeing someone who is living and breathing exactly the information, the education that I'm putting out to my clients. I want them to know that that's what I'm living as well. Because when they come in here, I am giving them a lot of information about their bodies and their systems and how their body works and, you know, ways to make change and manifest things and all sorts of things. And I want them to feel confident and comfortable that the person who is giving them that knowledge is someone who is living and breathing that experience as well, but who's also on their own journey and is also constantly making change.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I think that's a really important point, because then you can approach people's challenges from an experiential perspective, right?
Yeah.
So when we are constantly facing our own fears and facing our own health journeys, and, you know, everyone has little moments of like awakening or whatnot, and some people take it better than others. When you're constantly in that sort of journey of evolution and self-development and improvement, you can have that sort of like cellular understanding of what it's like to go through a change, right?
Yeah,
and what it's like to overcome those challenges in a healthy way, so that sometimes you do share stories with your clients, and sometimes you do kind of share that moment where you go, yeah, I remember the first time I did this. I had several slip-ups and then this helped or that helped, right? So this is where we can kind of come together and begin to share our experiences. And this is one of the reasons why we share so many of these stories, these personal stories with our listeners, because we do want people to understand that we live and breathe it. You know, we do go out of our way to have adventures and to try new things that are going to put our bodies into different states. And
well, that's the thing, is if people come into my office and they've done something different that I've never heard of before, there's a curiosity there for me. I'm deeply curious about, okay, and so how did that work for you? And like, what does that look like? And where can I learn more about that so that I can actually, you know, educate myself and see if that's something that could help someone else. So it's about really, you know, taking in as much information and challenging yourself to really think outside your mind at all the different types of ideas and perspectives that there are out there.
And that's also a positive mindset mentality, where if someone comes into your office and they have tried something that you don't know about, you don't just get defensive and you don't just say my way or the highway. You kind of go, oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to take note of that, right?
Yeah.
So because sometimes we may be triggered with insecurities, or sometimes people might feel defensive. So this is one of the reasons why it's so incredibly beneficial and important for you to find ways within your day to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
To put yourself in situations that will create safe amounts of fear, and then engage positive psychology, positive self-talk, affirmations, positive support around you, so that you can push through those fears and have an experience of satisfaction. Because at the end of the day, you ultimately want to go to bed feeling satisfied with your efforts. And as Tracey said before, unless you give it 100%, you haven't really tried something, truly. And I hear this all the time. I hear, you know, I've tried this, and I might say to someone, how long did you try it for? You know, so someone might be 45 years old and they tried something for 3 months and they say it didn't work. It didn't take your body 3 months to get to where it is, right? It took 45 years of programming.
Yeah.
So when you try something, when you challenge yourself, give it 100%.
Yeah, and don't be scared if it doesn't work out the way that you think it is going to work out. It's an experience, and it's an opportunity to learn and to grow and to get a different perspective on one idea that you're encountered with. That's all it is.
And you might just have a moment in nature where you are totally blissed out and really satisfied, and it's beautiful. And if you take nothing else away from that, then that is still an absolutely amazing experience.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
The information, views and opinions expressed on this podcast should not be used or treated as a substitute for nutritional, medical, psychological or other advice by a qualified health professional. Hosts and guests on the podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions. Nothing in the podcast should be used to diagnose, treat, cure or prevent any medical condition. The podcast is not intended to replace any medical or mental health treatment. All information and advice provided is for general well-being and does not take individual cases into consideration. Neither Tracey Saltis, Kali Alfaro or any sponsor endorse the opinions, views or conclusions expressed or shared on the podcast. Tracey Saltis and Kali Alfaro take no responsibility for any symptoms or consequences as a direct or indirect result of the podcast.